Hey there, everybody. Welcome back. It's the first video in a while here. We're now in a different location. As you might notice, the background is a little bit changed, but we're coming to you from Austin. And today we're going to talk about Carvana, and specifically Carvana's trade-in program, how it works, the ins and outs, pros, cons, and ultimately sort of think about whether it makes sense for you specifically, because it does vary based on different situations. So I think most people these days have at least heard the word Carvana, but if you haven't, I guess this will be a little bit new for you. But even if you have, I think we've got some interesting information in terms of specifically, again, whether it makes sense for your vehicle and your situation. So with that, we'll just sort of dive right in. All right, some of you might notice this microphone sitting very close to my face. We got some feedback on some previous videos that I was not talking loud enough, so hopefully we'll be able to sort that out. But again, definitely let me know if it's not working out, and hopefully we'll figure out something. So let's get to it. Carvana trade-in. What is it? How does it work? Why should you be aware of it? It'd be surprising to me if in the last 2 years, through their sort of skyrocketing popularity, the expansion of their public car vending machines, and more recently, the 97% stock drop of their publicly traded drop. If you haven't heard of Carvana in the sort of online dealership, it's become incredibly popular. They grew from basically nothing to almost 250,000 cars a year in about 7 years. So they definitely sprung onto the scene, and they're most credited with sort of bringing the car process, buying and selling process online. They started with sort of this no dealership front model, and it was ultimately very, very successful from a pure volume standpoint. Again, sort of more recently they've gotten into some expenses problems, but that doesn't necessarily have much to do with the daily sort of buying and selling of vehicles, at which they are quite effective. And so Carvana, not only did they push this ability to buy a car online, but they really sort of exploded the concept of selling your car online. Granted, Carmax had to some degree been doing this for a long time before in a relatively similar way. But again, sometimes, marketing is king, and ultimately I think Carvana really was the one that sort of got it in front of the daily, sort of the average person sitting at home. And so, with this sort of growth of the selling of your car aspect, I think it's become incredibly convenient. And, in a span of a short time, people have gotten very used to being able to get hard cash quotes for their vehicles from the safety of their own home. And as typically happens in the automotive space, when one person or one company does something that seems to make sense, many others sort of follow suit, and we've seen that happen over the last 2 years. And so no longer is Carvana or Carmax sort of the only option for you to sell your car easily. And so it makes it a little bit less clear as to whether this is really the best option for you to take. All right, so we've got some background on Carvana, what it is, how it operates, and a little bit of history. But let's dive into the actual trade-in process. How do you physically get your car to them? So it's actually quite simple. The first step is that you have to go to their website and get a quote for your specific vehicle. This is a pretty simple process. Takes a few minutes. It's much easier if you have your VIN or your license plate number. So if you don't have that, worth going and grabbing a picture of it from your car when you get a chance. But assuming you have that and some general information about the vehicle, you just go to their website, go to their Sell My Car page, There you'll see sort of a simple form, and so you can go, they pull your vehicle information from the VIN and the license plate. Once they do that, they ask you questions. What's the color of the car? What's the mileage of the car? And a few others based on some historical usage. A few of the big ones are also sort of number of accidents in the specifics in that case, and also potentially if you have a loan, what your bank that you got the loan from is, and how much you owe on that loan. If that information is easily available, you can go grab it, because that also helps when they're making the decision in terms of how much money they have to pay you and how they have to pay off the bank. But yeah, assuming you have sort of that high level information, it only takes a few minutes. And then once you submit that form to them, they'll return with a actual number. So unlike some offer sites in the past, specifically, Kelley Blue Book or NADA, where you used to get sort of ranges of like, okay, good, poor, and excellent, they actually give you a hard cash number, which is great in most cases. Because they operate in kind of the mid-market space, you won't always get an offer, especially if your car is very old, very, very new, or very expensive. So there are some kind of bounds to which it works. But as far as we've seen, and we've done about 3,000 quotes for sellers on Topmarq, generally Carvana is pretty consistent at least getting you an offer. Whether it's the best offer, we'll talk about in a minute. But generally you do end up with an offer. That offer is good for 7 days or 500 miles. So you can take a look at it, think about it, potentially get other offers from other places. At Topmarq, because we offer a comparison service, we always highly suggest going and searching other options to really compare for your vehicle. Whether you do it on Topmarq or not, totally up to you. But you never want to sell a car without getting at least two options, ideally more. So once you actually have your offer, you can make the decision as to whether or not you're going to sell with them. Assuming you do want to and you want to continue the process, the next option or the next step is to submit, sort of accept their quote through the site, submit a little bit more information about the title name, the pickup address, and potentially whether you want to buy another car from them so that they could do it in a swap, and you can get your tax credits depending on the state that you're in. So once you go through that, the last step of that sort of paperwork process is to schedule a pickup time. The cool thing about Carvana, because everything is remote and online, they will come actually pick the car up from you. Depending on your personality, this could be a pro or a con. I personally haven't really understood the value of having the car picked up directly from my house. So particularly, I live in an apartment complex, so it seems like a huge pain actually to try to coordinate some sort of trailer coming to get my car. But again, hey, that's just me, and clearly the success of the online model has shown that the vast majority of the population likes having somebody come pick up their car. Ultimately, once you schedule that appointment, they'll show up with the truck to come get it, and the person will do a quick inspection. Historically, from things that we've personally heard, the inspection is pretty light. If you lied about the fact that there's no dents on the side of your car and there's just like a massive dent, there's a very high probability that they will rescind their offer and potentially lower it. But again, that tends to be only in very severe cases. But you do want to be sort of upfront with the condition of the vehicle, because the last thing you want to do is sort of schedule all of this, go through the commotion, and then ultimately not be able to sell to them. Assuming that the car looks like how you said it was, and they will cut you a check there and then, which you can then go and deposit into your bank. Ultimately ending sort of the sequence. If you bought another car from them, rather than cutting you a check, they'll drop off the car that you bought, pick up your car, and do a little swap. So as you'll see, it's a relatively simple, stress-free process. It keeps you away from the dealerships. You don't have to interact with many people, which these days that's a big plus, especially in the car industry. And so I think, when you look at that sort of streamlined process, it's pretty clear to understand, why they were so successful so quickly, and why the rest of the automotive industry is sort of struggling to catch up and sort of get back to par, which is really what we've seen sort of across the other major dealers. One question we get a lot, not just with Carvana, but with a lot of dealers, whether they're online or in person, from potential sellers, is sort of wondering how these values are actually calculated. Where are they getting these numbers from? And I think realistically, it's actually, the surface level is less complicated than most people think. There are stores of data that show exactly how much specific vehicle types have sold for, and where. And there are millions of those records because of how many vehicles get sold in the United States each day. There's just tons and tons of this data that allows us to very accurately predict what a specific vehicle type will be priced within a certain market. And using that, the only remaining variable in that situation is the condition of the vehicle. And so going back to what we said earlier, historically, you could only get price ranges for your vehicle, and those are based on the condition of the vehicle. Is it in really bad condition? Is it in okay condition or great condition? The reason they did that was because they understood that if you know the condition of the vehicle, you can figure out the price. So ultimately, the concepts of whether or not, or the pricing of the vehicles in a certain region is very well defined, or at least closely defined. And so, the biggest hurdle has been, okay, how do we turn the condition of the vehicle into an actual value? And that's ultimately sort of what Carvana really forayed into with their online quote generation system, is trying to extract enough information from you and the APIs, like essentially getting vehicle history reports, how many crashes, service records, stuff like that. How can they extract the condition of the vehicle in a secure enough way to where they can pinpoint a specific price? And that's really ultimately what they did. So when you're looking at sort of where are they getting these values from, it's a mix of market data of sales prices, the variation of the condition that you've provided that information, and then also their sales volumes. Not every dealership is as sophisticated, and some use more information than others. But traditionally, and we've seen it in the pricing strategies from Carvana. We're pretty confident that they also feed back in their sales data in terms of what vehicles are selling quickly and sort of above market. Historically, we've seen Toyota Camrys go for just historically high prices in the Carvana trade-in program, and so that it sort of shows that they've seen arbitrage opportunities for that specific vehicle type, so they're going to add a little bit more on top. Another good thing about Carvana trade-in pricing is that because they were nationwide and they shipped everything anyway, they had the opportunity to offer somebody in Texas a little bit more money for their Camry because they knew they were going to ship it out to California and resell it there for more. Your local dealer who only has 4 or 5 dealerships in Texas or California specifically, they can't do that. And so that offered them a lot of opportunity as well to sort of shift their pricing models. One thing I did want to throw in there before we get into the breakdown of whether Carvana trade-in is going to be the best option for you specifically, I just wanted to make sure that we mentioned that to ensure that you really get the best possible offer from Carvana, it's worth doing a little bit of cleanup and making sure that the vehicle is in the best condition it can be without spending too much money. Now, if you have a previous accident and it's going to cost a lot of money to repair and you just want to get rid of the car, that's a totally separate thing. But in the last few years, it's been surprising to me how many people will just leave their car looking dirty when they go to sell. Even though the dealers will ultimately get the car detailed, they will leverage that dirtiness to sort of lower the price in many cases. And so you really want to get off to the best foot, put your best foot forward. Either take it to a detail, spend the weekend detailing the car, make sure that it's in the best condition possible, and potentially fix a few minor things if there are opportunities to do so. You really want to sort of make it look good when you show it so that the inspector, at the time that they show up, there's not something just, obviously wrong about it. That's just a quick, dirty, easy way to make sure that you're really getting the best possible offer from not only Carvana, but everybody else you go to as well. All right, now for the fun part. Is trading in with Carvana the best option for you? Now, unfortunately, there's no black and white yes or no answer here. The reality is that it varies, and it can vary significantly. Ultimately, this question is really what caused me to start Topmarq in the first place, which was I had a lot of friends, family, potential clients who were trying to sell, and they couldn't investigate or couldn't find the answer to this problem in a sort of easily searchable way. And I think, that's really what our pricing comparison attempts to solve is, what are the options available to me when I'm trying to sell my vehicle? And what are they going to offer me? And which one makes the most sense? Again, just across the thousands of vehicles we've done so far, we've seen pricing differences between the major automotive dealers, online and offline, sort of average differences of $2,500. $2,500 is can be significant, and make a huge difference on either going from negative equity to getting a check cut, or to sort of adding that value to the car you buy at the end of the day. So yeah, we see sort of a lot of value in spending some time trying to determine really which of these is the best option for you. If you're somebody who's really just looking for something easy, breezy, and sort of quick and painless, Carvana is going to be a great option. If you're not worried about getting the sort of absolute best deal and you just want that sort of smooth, streamlined process, it's definitely a good option. Granted, there are a few others available, like Vroom, that do have similar workflows. Again, this is really going to be a great option for somebody just looking to not have to deal with it. Assuming you're sort of not one of those people and you are looking really to narrow down, okay, what's the best possible price I can get for my vehicle across all options? And more importantly, for those who are also buying a new car, what's my total deal cost that it's going to occur if I trade in and buy another car? What are the options there when you consider this as a double transaction? So I think first we'll start with just across the board, Carvana is very focused on mid-market, relatively new vehicles that have not been in accidents. If your car does not fit that specific description, you are going to get less in general than you might be able to for something in that section, because that's what they specialize in. Now, I'm not saying that they're not going to still potentially be the best offer, but they do very much focus on those cars, and those are the only ones they can resell internally, which is where they really make their money. And so that means that they're able to offer slightly more than potentially others in that sort of mid-market, relatively new cars, because they have the distribution mechanism for that. So it's a good thing just to know, especially if you're just a little bit outside that range, maybe a relatively new Kia Hyundai or Kia Sonata, but it's had an accident, you're close enough to where they're still probably going to be a very competitive. However, if you're a 2002 BMW convertible that's been in 3 accidents, this is probably not going to be the place for you. They're also very anti modifications. I think I could have and probably will do a whole video in terms of trying to sell vehicles that have modifications on them. Generally, most of the large sites are not particularly good at them, and it's mostly beneficial to go to individual dealers for those. But again, Carvana specifically, not necessarily going to be great on that unless they're factory installed options. Moving past that into trucks, because Carvana's sort of reseller and user base tends to be non-heavily truck focused, we've seen that their offers for them tend to be lower than, again, potentially other options in the space, or because trucks have gotten so expensive recently, it also tends to pay dividends to actually go and get quotes from in-person dealers for your trucks. Unfortunately, that can still be a pain, and that's something that we're working on trying to fix. But again, the higher value cars are harder to higher value trucks are harder to get great cash offers online. Speaking of high prices, the luxury market also tends to be sort of outside of Carvana's sweet spot. So if you've got a pretty new, Audi A8, BMW 5 Series, 6 Series, any of those, you will likely get an offer from Carvana, and it'll probably be okay or average, but historically we've been able to find clients better offers elsewhere for those kinds of luxury vehicles. So worth taking a shot with the online dealers, and then also spending some time looking at potentially your local brand dealer, your Audi dealer or your BMW dealer, depending on what you have, and checking out the options there as well. So again, going through, I think the best, you're going to do the best on Carvana if you understand what kind of car you have, and whether you fit inside their sort of ideal marketplace. Because if you don't, what they're going to do is they're going to buy your car, then they're going to sell it to a wholesale, they're going to put it on the wholesale auction space, and they're going to sell it to some other dealer. And if they're going to do that, why don't you do that? And make the extra $500 or what have you, that they're basically going to take for providing that service. Lastly, it's important to consider, once assuming that if you are going to buy another car, what are the implications of the overall deal? There are in many states a lot of benefits to trading in your vehicle when you're buying a new one, because you get a tax credit. That can be several $1,000s depending on how much you're spending on the vehicle and the value of the vehicle you're trading in. But that's very, very impactful on the end sales price. But you have to trade it into. You have to buy a new vehicle from the dealer you actually traded your vehicle into. And that means there has to be a vehicle that you want from Carvana that is appropriately priced. As we had mentioned sort of a little bit before, Carvana's benefits really have grown out of the ease and convenience of the platform, not necessarily the bottom line pricing of their vehicles that they sell. And so if you are somebody who's extraordinarily price focused, it may not ultimately make sense to take a couple $100 higher offer for your vehicle from Carvana, only to spend an extra $1,000 on the vehicle you want to purchase. And so it's always worth considering what your total deal cost is going to be. Potentially you can trade your vehicle into a different dealership and get a cheaper car purchase price. So again, if you are going to do that deal as one piece, you want to consider it from both sides as well. So ultimately, when you look at it, there are a lot of pros. There are some cons to using the Carvana trade-in program, and it really depends on what your goals are in your sales process and the type of vehicle that you have and the condition that it's currently in. That said, it's a great way to start the sales process, to at least get a quote to see if it's sort of in the range you're interested in. We also provide a tool that lists out all the options available to you for selling, both on the private party side and the online dealers and the other local dealer groups that also offer cash quotes. And so we found that that's been one of the difficult things for sellers is, most people have heard of Carvana, most people have heard of Room, but not everybody has heard about the AutoNation online trade-in program, or potentially, the Driveo online trade-in. And so, it's really important to us to try to get people sort of more aware of their options available to them, and to get, like I said earlier, several quotes when you're trying to sell your car, because the difference can be potentially several $1,000s across the board, and that's definitely worth spending a few minutes trying to get more offers. Well, I hope this was helpful. If you have any additional questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Definitely either try to edit this video or add them into another one in the future. But thanks for listening, and best of luck on your car sale.